Amandla. 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 Good morning, comrades. We are actually running behind time, and we're going to do our best to catch up because the program is much longer. The first thing, we would like to thank all of you for coming for this most important event, which is the African Communist 60th anniversary. We really appreciate that a lot of interest had been shown on this important occasion of the South African Communist Party. I am not going to do any welcome, but I will request our National Deputy Chairperson to take up the podium as quickly as is possible to do that welcome. But what I need to do before I actually hand over to him, we have, like I said, a tight program. If you look at your programs, or if you do not have a program, the program goes as follows for this first session. We will be having Comrade Thulani representing Comrade Senzeni Zokwane. So Comrade Thulani Ngesi will be coming here as one of the chairpersons of the party, and we'll have our opening address that will be done by the President of the ANC and of the country as well, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, who will be focusing on the ANC and the African Communist over 60 years. Thereafter, Comrade Begin Jalinjali, the General Secretary of COSATU, is already here, seated over there. He will also be doing a presentation, and he will be focusing on the African Communist, the trade union movement, and the African Communists. That's what he will be doing. Our keynote address will be delivered by our General Secretary, Comrade Blade Nzimande, and Comrade Blade Nzimande will be talking on the core issue, which is the celebration of the 60th anniversary of the African Communist. So the program is divided into various areas. We're going to have two panels as well during the course of the day, when Comrade Thulas will be sharing for the next panel, which will have Comrade Isop, who's already here, Comrade Isop Pahad, and then there will be Comrade Lindiwe, I haven't seen her as yet, and there will be Comrade Jenny Schreiner. Jenny is coming a bit later. There will be Comrade Mcebisi Jonas. So that will be a panel that will take comrades 15 minutes each to render. Then we'll break for a quick lunch, which after the lunch you'll have to come back to the hall again. Then we'll have 5 comrades presenting at a 10 minutes time each. That will be, Comrade Diniko will be represented because he is deployed, I think, to China by the party, so he's not around. I know that there's somebody who's representing Comrade Dineko, and then there will be Comrade Jenny there, Comrade Buti Manamela, Comrade Nidri, then lastly we'll have Comrade Lechisa. I need to emphasize that Comrade Lechisa's name is not written as it is for those that have a program. It's just a typo. And of course I know that, you know, when the President earlier on said we're not even allowed to make mistakes as communists. So we are actually removing it and making sure that it's Senuri in a proper sense. And then at the end, Comrade Jeremy Cronin will be doing the entire roundup of the whole program, and that's where we'll be closing. So without a waste of time, comrades, I will call Comrade National Deputy Chairperson, Comrade Thulas Ngesi.
Thanks, Comrade Treasurer, Comrade Joyce, as the chairperson of the session. Funa ngithini bheki? Une message ufuna ngidlulise. Thanks, or the living wage. To the General Secretary of the Communist Party, together with the Central Committee members as the host of this particular activity. The President of the African National Congress as our ally, and all the leaders who are here, the comrades, the guests who are here. I've noted the German ambassador is amongst us, and even those I've not been able to recognize, and all the comrades who are here. Let me, on behalf of the National Chairperson, take the opportunity to welcome all of you in this particular celebration. This publication, The African Communist, was founded in October 1959. And it's very important that we celebrate it's the history of this, because we're talking about now 60 years of its anniversary. What is also important is the role it has played, which will be reflected here by some of our stalwarts. That's why we have people like Comrade Aesop in theorizing and also sharpening the debates at that particular time over a period of these 60 years around the political and the socio-economic debates in the country, outside and even inside this particular country. Some of us were just victims by just carrying this particular publication without even members of the communists, but just carrying that particular publication. We became the victims because of the power to influence the thinking of the young people at that particular time. That's why, amongst others, you would have Comrade Lindisi Sulu speaking as the youth of the time, how they were influenced by this particular publication. So we hope, therefore, comrades, this will help the communists, because it must continue. It will help to shape the current debates. We are involved in a number of debates, both theoretical and practical debates, which are the political debates, where we're taking this particular country, where it comes from, where we're taking it, but also socio-economic debates, and influencing the workers in particular during this time of unemployment, as to how do we analyze it and give it a left perspective, Comrade Beg, the issue of the living wage and the unemployment. It's very important. And even a lot of other struggles we are involved in, community struggles we are involved in, the issues of a gender perspective today. Where are we with that, in theorizing that, so that it can inform our own struggles? You will notice then, comrades, that we have a range of the speakers who are going to be talking to the different topical issues. And then after that, it's a discussion amongst ourselves. And that's why we are here today. And with those few words, you are all welcome, comrades. Thank you very much.
Thank you thanks very much, Comrade Tulas. Comrades, it is normally a culture amongst ourselves, if we have a president of the country, the president of the African National Congress, to have somebody who will actually make the president stand up. In this instance, can I request you, Comrade General Secretary, Comrade Blade, to do so?
Thank you very much. Sorry, President, I could see you were getting ready to stand up. Good morning, Comrade President, Comrade Beg, and I see the DSG of the ANC is here as well, Comrade Jesse, and all the others as they have been recognized. President, we just thought that it is important that as I introduce you, firstly to express our appreciation to yourself for agreeing to be part of this. To us, this is a very historic occasion. Of course, I know the reason why you are here. When I stormed your office some weeks ago to try and get you here. You said, no, you don't even need convincing. We can't have this without the senior-most representation by the ANC participating in this event. We really do appreciate that you have been able to come. So that is why I'm being asked specifically then to call upon you to actually come and address this gathering. Thank you.
Program Director, Comrade Joyce, and General Secretary of the party, members of the Central Committee who are here, and General Secretary of COSATU, and veterans of the Communist Party. It's wonderful to see comrades like Isop amongst us. I was telling him that he's getting younger by the day and a little bit more handsome than he used to be. Not true. And to see Comrade Jeremy Cronin and Comrade Yunus and the others, leaders of the Young Communist League and all PYA components, and His Excellency the Ambassador of Germany and other excellencies who may well be here with us, and comrades and friends, and of course the Deputy Secretary General of the mighty African National Congress, Comrade Jesse Duarte, and other leaders of the ANC who are here, and leaders of COSATU, of course, and more broadly our alliance partners. As we came in here, I paid accolades to Comrade Nick Wolpe, because I haven't been here for a very long time, for the way in which this place has been kept. It's a most wonderful historic place, and I'm glad that this seminar is taking place here. And Comrade Blade was saying that we don't use this place often, and I think we should, because it's been so wonderfully revamped and recaptured to what it was in the past, and it really, really tells the story in many ways of a portion and a phase in our struggle. Allow me, comrades, to convey our greetings from the ANC. I'm honored to been invited to be here today as we mark and celebrate 60 years of the publication of the very first edition of the African Communist. And we are celebrating this anniversary not simply because it is customary or a courteous thing to do, but because we genuinely recognize the immense historic contribution that the African communists made in the idealization or the ideational sphere of our struggle against apartheid. We're here to celebrate what I would call an institution, much as it is a publication. It's a publication that in many ways did become an institution. And the African communists did not just descend from above as a result of some divine celestial intervention. Its creation and success over the 6 decades depended entirely on the dedication as well as the hard work of some of our most under-celebrated comrades. And I think as we think about the African communists, we should think about the many comrades who were behind it. And by celebrating this anniversary, we are therefore paying tribute to countless revolutionaries of our movement who made the African Communists possible, both as contributors, as the producers of the publication, as the editors, as well as distributors. And I guess the distributors were in many ways right in the trenches, because they were executing possibly the most dangerous aspect of the work, because a number of them did get arrested in the course of time. And there were many other people who participated in the entire value chain of producing this publication. So I think today we must pause for a while and pay tribute to their extraordinary spirit as well as conviction that made them unflinching in their desire to launch the African Communists in 1959, during these dark days in our country when all seemed hopeless and also helpless. Any association with communist material could, and indeed, lead to imprisonment, torture, and in a number of cases it even resulted in death. The first edition of the African Communist declared, open quotes, "This magazine, the African Communist, has been started by a group of Marxist-Leninists in Africa to defend and spread the inspiring and liberating ideas of communism in our great continent, and to apply the brilliant scientific method of Marxism to the solution of its problems. It is being produced in conditions of great difficulty and danger. Nevertheless, we mean to go on publishing it because we know that Africa needs communist thought as dry and thirsty soil needs rain," close quotes. So we admire their determination and their selflessness communist has served to conscientize. It also shaped and produced the best ideologues among us who play no small role guiding policy formulation and ensuring that the policies that we adopted and continue to adopt are at all times consistent with the theoretical foundations of our movement. The African Communist was not only an educational material to the intellectually curious, it was also a campaign tool which had the faces of the Rivonia trialists on its cover page from time to time, as well as a carrier of worldviews that shaped and honed our internationalism. It was also a platform that was presented for robust inter-party and intra-organizational debates which would have a bearing on the strategic direction of our revolution. And in a way, it was a crucible for great ideas, great debates, and robust debates. And sometimes when we hear about some of the debates that used to take place, and we can decry the fact that we no longer have such great debates that we have heard about that took place in exile, in the NEC, in the structures of the party, and even in SACP, debates that were vigorous, that were underpinned by deep intellectual rigor. And we can decry the fact that they no longer take place. But the African Communists helped to inspire such debates. The 1992 third and fourth quarter editions, exploring the prospects of a negotiated settlement in South Africa, as well as the sunset clauses that would enable such a settlement, remain the best example of how communist thought, transmitted through the African Communist, has played a decisive role in the direction of our movement and country. The African Communist is one historical repository of some of the best intellectual traditions of our democratic movement. It has helped facilitate important debates about the future of our country, and also gave us the opportunity to be exposed to new and varied ideas about the same questions. When some of us were still in the trade union movement, it was not uncommon to find even ordinary workers in as hidden places as the mines of our country being able to have thoroughgoing discussions and debates which were in part inspired by what they would have read in the African Communists, as well as Umsebenzi. In other words, the African Communists expanded our worldview, and may I add, the worldview of just ordinary workers as well, and brought to light the existence of many other worldviews and perspectives. And in this regard, we appreciate the role that was played by this publication in exposing the limitations of narrow, what you would call African chauvinism, as opposed to progressive nationalism. But the journal also played a very important role in sharpening our understanding of non-racialism. The ANC, in its formulations regarding the national question at Morogoro in 1969, had been fundamentally influenced by the debates that were carried in the African Communists during the course of the preceding decade. It was a joy the other day when we had a state visit to Tanzania to go to Morogoro, which even the president of Tanzania referred to as the oasis and the crucible of our liberation struggle. Our non-racialism, premised on the proposition that we are all equally South African, is all the more important now when, in the light of scarce resources and a tough economic climate, some in our society are tempted to revert to the backward tendency of magnifying otherwise dangerous racial and ethnic differences as a basis of accumulation and exclusion. It is our legitimate expectation that the African communist will continue to place itself at the service of our movement, to propagate our idea of non-racialism and other morally compelling ideas as it successfully did for the past 60 years, especially under difficult conditions of illegality. Although wholly committed to the success of the NDR, as led by the ANC, the African Communist has always been a platform for critical ideas, holding true to the Chinese dictum, let 100 flowers bloom, let 100 schools of thought contend. Now, the AC has made its mark in the battlefield of ideas. It has always sought to challenge backward ideas and debunk the myths upon which right-wing and anti-communist and anti-ANC perspectives are based. More importantly, in the second phase of our transition from apartheid colonialism to national democratic society, the African Communist has also served as a platform for progressive voices critical of the ANC and its government. And to this extent, we view the journal as an integral part of our revolutionary conscience, warning us always about the slow pace of socio-economic transformation, the dangers of corruption and capture of the state by private corporate interests, the erosion of our moral credibility, the weakening of state organs, and the resultant decline in our electoral support. Now, these obviously have been warnings, but they also need to be turned into the call to action, where the African Communists, having been playing a leading role in propagating ideas that have propelled us to achieving our liberation, now needs to continue calling us to action to address all these challenges that our revolution faces. Now, needless to say, all these things taken in their totality do constitute a dangerous point of entry for counter-revolution and the reversal of our democratic gains. All the efforts we have undertaken towards the renewal of both our movement and the state are in no small measure influenced by the many critical voices we would have encountered in the African Communists. Now, as was said in a letter to the journal by one of its readers, pluralism of opinions and diversity of views is not a sign of weakness. It is an expression of inner party democracy. Such healthy debates can only strengthen the party. We are indeed looking forward to the next 60 years of the AC, a critical platform for healthy, necessary debates in our society. And I'm personally happy, Comrade Blade, that you have managed to archive every single edition of the African Communist since 1959 on your website. Now, this gives us the confidence that this great journal, which has a very special place in the history not only of our struggle, but in the history of our country, must and will outlive us, and we will be able to bequeath it to countless future generations who, in all likelihood, will need communist thought as dry and thirsty soil needs rain. Much as someone feared as we were coming in here that it was Comrade Tulas who was saying that these high soaring temperatures may well mean that we're into a drought season again. But with regard to communist thought, this is needed as dry and thirsty soil needs rain. And may communists, the African communists rather, continue to be published, to grow from strength to strength, because it has carved out a place for itself in the history of our country. And we wish you many more years of thought leadership, Comrade Blade, which is absolutely necessary right now. I was very pleased when you gave me a document this morning, a document which is a commentary by the party on the Treasury paper that was released. And as I said, I'm going to read it very, very closely, because the party, and indeed the AC, has always been the leading edge of getting us to think, as they say colloquially, out of the box, and to look forward to the new ideas. And the challenge that I'd like to leave with the party, as well as the writers, editors of the AC, is that we want the party to continue giving that leadership. And it should never leave the gap to a whole host of others who may well want to call themselves vanguard this and vanguard that, as some have done in the recent past. We know the party as being the party that plays that vanguard role, but a vanguard role in name only. Vanguard role in as far as putting forward ideas that will take our nation forward. If there ever was a time when those are needed, time. And for me, it was easy to accept the invitation to come to the 60th celebration of the African Communists, because the AC has always been a war of some ideas that have taken our struggle forward. And the challenge I leave, therefore, is may this role that has been played in the past by the party and the AC continue. We look forward to that role being played. I love jazz, and in my love for jazz, Comrade Blade, there was this great performer called Miles Davis, who always came up with some of the great compositions of jazz, and he's one of the most outstanding jazz performers and jazz composers. And there was a time when the entire jazz world said, we're waiting for Miles to show the way. We're waiting for Miles to show the way with his new compositions. And it was almost like the jazz world had come to a standstill, because they were waiting for Miles to come up with new compositions. And in a number of ways, could say that quite often the party is waited for to show the way and to come up with great ideas. Now the repository, some of those ideas have been embedded in the African communist. And that is why I say the African communists, having played this very important role in our struggle, we can safely say that we will continue waiting for the wonderful ideas that come from the African communists, and indeed, of course, inspired by the South African Communist Party. This is a celebration of a great institution, an institution that has always led the way. And we wish, as I said earlier, that this tradition may continue and the party should also continue leading in that regard. Thank you very much.
Very great and wise words indeed for a very special event of the African Communists in 60 years. Comrade President, we really thank you very much, and I would request for another round of applause. Thank you very much, comrades. I must say, comrade, that Comrade President, we thank you for actually outlining this important role of the AC today. We also thank the fact that you have identified the AC together with the interactive role of the African National Congress together with the South African Communist Party in a very eloquent way. We so much appreciate that. I need to promise the comrades, particularly from the party, that from now onwards we'll be having a lot of Comrade President to be in our occasions. As I'm saying this, we have a fundraising dinner on the 22nd. A Comrade President will be part of us. Again, comrades, we have also the special Congress. Comrade President will be with us, and in other caucus meetings. So for now, apologies to the ANC, but we will have the President to us.
Don't say it too much, they'll think I've been captured.
Now, noting that we'll be having a lot of Comrade President, at this point in time, comrades, I will request to release him to actually attend to other tasks. I will do that as soon as Comrade Njali has done his presentation, and we appreciate that, Comrade President. We may not conclude this first session before we have the trade union movement talking to the African Communist, and we have the General Secretary, Comrade Bheki Njali, who is with us here, coming here in front to do that. Over to you, Comrade Bheki. Boy.
Amandla. Amandla. Icon. Amandla. Away to Matla. Comrade Joyce, Program Director, I must start by registering my grievance. The first one is that the program I got on the invitation was that I'm going to speak last because when I was then told that I'm going to speak last, I prepare my speech in a manner that the president of the ANC will not be in the house. Now, there are issues that are not for his ears, and I'm not sure whether I would manage to see them on time. But when the president says, want to listen to me, I got more intimidated. Comrade Blade Nzimande and the leaders of the party who are present here, Comrade JC representing our movement. I've seen the ambassador of Germany, and I'm mentioning him for one reason, that in Germany now they are working less than 34 hours per week without loss of pay. And we've invited them on the 31st of October, both the leader of business and the leader of the trade unions, to share their experience, why they are working so fewer hours and more productive without loss of pay. So they're here. Comrade Pahat and Comrade Lichisa. The reason I'm mentioning Comrade Lichisa is because Sanko is not here. And Comrade Pahat, Comrade Lichisa was once a leader of Sanko. He has to be released from some of his work and go and organize Sanko because we need it most. Comrade President Ramaphosa, I get a little bit jealous when you were introduced both as the president of the ANC and the president of the country. With how possible we can have two positions when we have none, Tina? Can't you share one of the presidency to some other people? 60 years is a milestone, comrades. It is a time to celebrate an opportunity to momentarily look back, but also to chart the way forward. The African Communist is a periodical premise on African solidarity and provides a platform for all Marxist-Leninists of our continent to engage, debate, formulate ideas of the Marxist-Leninism. We are all richer for its existence as workers. We look back on the past 60 years with to its contribution. You see, problem with we from Mozambique, some of the English words are problematic. Read them in Portuguese. To its contribution to our liberation and education. The African Communists play an integral part in helping to elevate the civility of our public discourse, conscientizing us and also allowing us to scrutinize and debate issues in a meaningful way. It also allows us to be both informed and properly engaged. In the struggle for partial and transitional demands, the workers now more than ever before need platforms like the African Communist to help us to analyze, critique the current epoch, and also inform our decisions as we try to map the way forward. I want to start my input by quoting the current General Secretary of the party, Comrade Blade Nzimande, when he provided a warning to what could be or what could become of our revolution during our 8th National Congress. And I quote him as follows, Comrade. You may not remember this, Comrade Blade, but maybe let's refresh your mind. You said, unless the working class leads, working programmatically and in action with the widest range of the mass of the urban and rural poor, unless this is done, the promise of the 1994 will collapse into an agenda of a narrow self-enrichment and general confusion. The SACP is prepared to work with all potentially patriotic and progressive forces. But one thing is clear. The bourgeoisie, the emergence bourgeoisie, separately and together are incapable of charting a way out of the persisting crisis of underdevelopment. The working class must lead, end quote. Marxism-Leninists teach us that the party of the working class has a leading role in the struggle for elimination of the exploitation of men by men and the building of the socialist society, which will eventually be transformed into a communist society. But a party does not earn the title of vanguard of the working class merely by proclaiming it, but it achieves it by degree, or it achieves it by degree, or to the, which is organizing the working class it represents, the caliber of its day-to-day leadership, and its devotion to the revolutionary cause. Comrade, this is the reason why, as workers, we expect the party to give correct guidance to the revolutionary cause, especially now when there is a lot of zigzagging on the policy front and the overall political direction of the country. A worsening economic crisis is causing anxiety, helplessness, and panic to the struggling working class that is being crushed by the cost of living and underemployment. For the first time since 1994, an IMF World Bank intervention is realistic if things do not dramatically change. We know the pains of the IMF as workers all over the world, and this is one battle, Comrade President, that we must all together fight to prevent. Let us look at the considerable pushback against any talk of the Reserve Bank expanding its mandate and acting in the interest of the unemployed and the poor majority. This is the same Reserve Bank that has done considerable damage to the country's economy under the guidance of independence. After the democratic election in 1994, ex-apartheid Minister Derek Keyes and the South African Reserve Bank under another apartheid leader, Chris Stolz, decided to scrap the Currency and Exchange Act of 1933 and the adoption by the Reserve Bank of what is called a flexible exchange control. This was done to facilitate the capital flight out of the country. This led to a mass exodus of large corporations like the Anglo-American, the SACP, Dementia Data, and Old Mutual from the country they have exploited for over a century to settle abroad. In these turbulent political and economical times, let us also reflect on the dangerous irreversible path of degeneration of the NDR. Our NDR is a revolutionary perspective that is different from the bourgeois democrat and the nationalist struggle that have often been dominated by the elite. The elitism that we see today and the agenda of a narrow self-enrichment and the general confusion is something that is foreign to us as the workers who still believe in the NDR. As workers, we do not identify with this dominance of a neoliberal policy trajectory that attacks our labor rights, pushes privatization, trade liberalization, casualization, and retrenchment. Our NDR is not about the survival of the fittest. The dominance of monopoly capital means that many of the socio-economic gains of our revolution that we have achieved since 1994 stands in a danger of being overwhelmed by continuous declining shares of workers in the national income as a result of intensified mechanization of work, casualization and retrenchment amidst the persistence of the triple crisis of unemployment, poverty and inequality. Workers therefore want to see and hear a vanguard of the working class providing direction. Have we given up on building the global internationalist working class movement altogether? Also, what is the socialist theory of the alternative world economy to stand up to the free market, or are we now accepting state capitalism and a moderated neoliberalism as the only available and workable solutions? Trade unions are under siege and they have to reflect on why they have failed to defend and improve the lives of the workers, but also we know that there's nothing inherent revolutionary about trade unionism. Unions do not challenge the existence of wage slavery. They merely seek to obtain a more favorable terms for the sale of their labor power. The reality is that trade unions are declining at an alarming rate, and they are no longer able to work with the broadest section of workers in strike activities and campaign. If we remember, Comrade President, the boycott of Colgate in the 80s, it was not only those workers alone, but it was the whole community standing together with workers. We therefore expect the party of the working class to stand in the frontline trenches of all kinds of struggles, even when they involve only the most modest material interests or democratic rights of the working class. The party must take an active part in mass trade union activities for the purpose of strengthening them and raising their spirit of militancy. As we are marking Red October in an environment where there is an upsurge in xenophobic attitude and violence in the country, and this is putting the African working class against each other. How is this level of political backwardness possible under our watch? What is the role and the responsibility of the party and the progressive trade union movement in arresting this political degeneration? There are some of the pertinent questions that the African Communist has posed on us and allow us to debate in greater details over the better part of the 6 decades. It exposed us to incisive opinion pieces, critiques and insightful analysis that left us feeling empowered and confident of effecting change and embarking on a program of transformation not only in the country but also in the continent. The state of Marxism in the continent is regrettable, and the emergence of narrow Africanism and nationalist tendencies point to the increase of a political backwardness. One of the achievements of our national democratic revolution has been its ability to mobilize and unite our people, particularly the black majority, around the project of non-racialism, non-sexism, and more precisely, around the project of national building. Our revolution is now faced with growing threats that undermine the ability not only to unite, but also to mobilize the black majority. The most disturbing development is the resurfacing of a narrow Africanism, including tribalism, which is tied to both the populist demagogues within and outside the ranks of the broader movement. The strategic task of regaining the unity of our people will not be possible without us implementing the second, more radical phase of our revolution. And to be more precise, we cannot effectively mobilize and unite our people without the program aimed at ending monopoly capitalism, accelerating state industrialization, overcoming apartheid partial inequality, and advancing our massive education and training program, and so on. In the immediate post-colonial independence period, before capitalist integration, liberated Africa seems to share a critique of capitalist development and was committed to the following: an anti-capitalist alternative development. At the head of the liberation project were the broad multi-class movement of liberation capable of mobilizing alliances of the widest range of social forces led by the working class and the peasantry. The main feature currently of contemporary African liberation project is the decline of liberation movement as a legitimate expression of the democratic demands of colonial oppressed people, and in some cases, an open abandonment of national democratic task. It is clear that the working class require organization to prosecute the day-to-day defense of the economic and social interest. This brings us to the weighty matter of the SACP and the state power, and the implication of this question on the nature of the alliance. We also have to deal both with the question of reconfiguration of the alliance around the minimum program of the Freedom Charter, as well as the short-term tactical alliances with the broad formation within the civil society that may share temporary common interest and concern on issues such as corruption. We now have the situation where the party and COSATU totally agree on the need of fundamental change in the nature of the alliance. We have already answered the question as whether the ANC in its current state and class orientation is capable of uniting and spearheading the struggle of the broader masses of our people, of which the working class is the primary motive force. The answer to this question is not necessary. But it is not enough to offer the working class only a new address. Our comrade in NUMSA and SAFTU learned this recently when they gave workers a new address without doing the qualitative analysis of the balances of forces. But the issue for the poor performance of the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party is also our problem, because we need to understand its ramification to the left in general. What does this mean for the progressiveness when it comes to the election and the electorate attitude towards the socialist principles? Comrade, as we push back against the fraudulent agenda of the self-enrichment, neoliberalism and monopoly capitalism, we must also give substance content in theory and practice to the real alternatives. Let us advance a genuine second radical phase of the National Democratic Revolution. In this month, when we celebrate the centenary of the Bolshevik Revolution that was spearheaded by none other than Vladimir Lenin, whose creative combination of revolutionary theory and practice left the international working class with a science of Marxist-Leninism, we need to do more to lay the foundation of socialism. Marx-Leninism and the Bolshevik Revolution show us that the challenge to the revolutionary is practically to make the revolution rather than wait for it to happen. So we are wishing Comrade Blade, the African communist, to continue and give us a platform to be able to engage and debate. Thank you very much.
Comrade Nzimande, thank you very, very, very much. Comrades, we'll be moving to the next part, which talks to the keynote address. I know that we have already released the president, and we know that he's got many tasks for today, as to have been requested by both the officers. So maybe because we're all together, we can start our usual thing of a song. And Comrade Blade will then get ready to come in front. I've seen that we've got all our, almost all our provincial secretaries, almost the entire central committee. Maybe the comrades are scared that we might take more time. If akunalo igweji somewhere, sizawuqhubeka ke sibiza uComrade Nobhalo. Comrade Blade is already here. Umhlaba wonke sandleni sabantu.
Amandla. Amandla. Long live the African communists, long live.
Long live.
Thank you very much. Comrade Joyce, our national treasurer. Who is our program director this morning. And let me also greet the other members of the Central Committee who are here, including our provincial secretaries who are attending this function. Comrade Begi Jali Jali, the GS of COSATU, and other COSATU leaders or affiliate leaders who are here. Our veterans, led by Comrade Isop Pahat. Pahat, we are very pleased that you could make time to be with us here today. We really appreciate that. The staff in the office of the SACP and all other guests, or participants rather, who are here, including members of the media, thank you very much for being here. Comrades, maybe just a bit of background. We had arranged to have 60 people here, which is what I think we have, if not slightly more, before the others left. It was deliberate that we wanted it to be a manageable gathering, but still with dignity. So we really appreciate all of you that we have been able to be here. I think that this is truly a historic occasion in the history of our party. Because in celebrating the African communists, we are celebrating the ideological and educational role of the AC, its political contribution in the struggle against colonialism of a special type, as you would normally find this phrase mostly in that magazine. Over the years, we're also celebrating and reminding ourselves of the role of the SACP in progressive and alternative media. It's a very important thing to celebrate as well. Always sometimes argue with the media, commercial media in the country, that the reason why we often feel very strongly about wrong things that sometimes happen through the media is because we as the Communist Party can claim that not only do we have a long history in progressive media, but we fought for it, including the very space today that we have. Of course, the African Communist has been part of many other media outlets that historically in the past the Communist Party has been associated with, including our very own Umsebenzi, which was renamed that in the 30s before it was the Worker. Other publications that may not have been party publications, but communists played a crucial role, the Spark. I'm afraid I also have to say the New Age. Although in this regard we have a huge struggle to try and reclaim this glorious publication, given what later paraded itself under the name of the New Age, as an instrument of the parasitic networks of state capture. I think that, comrades, perhaps it's also important that as we tell the history of the African communists, we remind ourselves of the historical context in which the AC was born exactly in October 1959. I must declare I was just over a year old. So if I make some errors in the history, perhaps you will understand that. Now, of course, when the AC was launched in October 1959, there was no such gathering, because it was launched when the SACP was deep in the underground in October 1959. And one can locate the history of the AC by going back to the fact that when the apartheid regime came into power in 1948, the very first piece of legislation that it prepared was the Suppression of Communism Act, and it intended banning the party. The party, of course, in its wisdom, not without heavy debates, decided to dissolve itself before the passage of that legislation. There were big debates. There were some who were disagreeing in the party leadership at the time. But also there was a big debate in the lead up to 1953 whether the Communist Party should be reconstituted underground, as it was now an illegal organization and disbanded, dissolved itself. Now, of course, many of you will know that the SACP, what was banned was the CPSA, the Communist Party of South Africa, which reconstituted itself in 1953 as the South African Communist Party. Comrade Cathy, before he passed away, Comrade Katrata, insisted Comrade Isop should be knowing about this, that the reconstitution took place at the back of an Indian-owned shop somewhere in Egoruland, which, by the way, I think this is part of the tasks that we have in retracing our history, to go and try and identify these buildings and places, just like we did when we identified the site of the founding Congress of the SACP in 1921. I don't know what we did with that plaque. One of the big debates after the reconstitution of the SACP inside the party was whether to announce that the party has reconstituted itself or not. Now, that, of course, to many communists would have been an act of defiance to tell the apartheid regime that we are not going to get rid of communists. We have banned us, but we have reconstituted ourselves underground. We exist. However, this became a tricky issue in the party because there was a concern within the ranks of our structures in the underground, and the overriding consideration was that by announcing that the SACP is reconstituting itself, how is that going to affect the participation of communists in then legal organizations? And how would communists be seen? You know, in the ANC, which was then legal, in the trade union movement, which was largely legal, in what became the Congress Alliance in the 1950s. Were communists not then going to be regarded as a secret cabal that normally decides, takes decisions underground and come and try and impose them? By the way, this is a very important example of how the party in its entire existence has always been concerned about the unity of the movement, even sometimes at the expense of taking decisions that would have seemed to have been in the interest of advancing the party. Now, this debate was partly resolved in the late 50s because it was an ongoing debate to say that, but not to announce that the party exists, and also no outlets other than in the deep underground to discuss Marxism-Leninism. There's no propaganda on Marxism-Leninism. May actually kill the party. Even the underground structures may be useless if the people, the working class, that the party regarded as its immediate constituency was not aware. It was within this context that a compromise was reached to then, okay, at least let's form let's have a journal, a magazine, as it was called then. But it's very interesting because the quote that the president referred to, it's very interesting. I would like to reread parts of it just to illustrate the point I want to make. It says, this magazine has been started by a group of Marxist-Leninists in Africa. And this was very deliberate because the party did not want this magazine to be associated with its continuing existence in the light of the other debate that was there. So it was just a group. It wasn't really a group. It was the underground structures of the SACP that had actually formed the African Communists. So, yes, as the president quoted, we still believe today that our continent actually still does need these ideas, even more today than perhaps even at that time. Marxist ideas in understanding the African continent and also in taking forward the struggle of the workers and the poor in this continent. And of course, we are proud that 6 years later, we are still going. This time, of course, we must also recall many, many comrades who played a role in the development of the African communists. Some of them are here. Comrade Isop, Comrade Jeremy still continues to play a role, Comrade Eunice and many others, but I'll come back to that. And I think it's proper that also we remember the founding editor of the African Communist, Michael Hamel. I was telling Comrade Jenny that I have this strange thing about the fact that one of the party intellectuals that I really revere, even in my privacy on the side, I never knew him. He passed away in 1974, was doing grade 11 in today's language. It's Michael Hamel. And of course, he's accredited for having been the main drafter of this 1962 program, the South African Road to Freedom. He passed away in Prague, in the Czech Republic, when he was deployed to the World Marxist Review. I don't know, perhaps, whether you followed after him. You replaced him after he passed away in 1974. I'm very pleased, Comrade Jeremy, that next month I'm going to the Czech Republic, and one place I want to go to is that gravesite. Something I would like to do on your behalf, and it would be a better idea. I don't know how the government of the Czech Republic would react to that, in having a small plaque that I can carry and be able to put somewhere in honor and in remembrance of this founding editor on the 60th anniversary of the African Communists. We are proud also, we also managed as the party to have him given one of the national orders posthumously to celebrate and recognize the role that he played as a party leader. Now, very briefly, comrades, that's the context in which the AC arose. Of course, many other comrades are going to speak with much more authority. That since its founding, the AC has played many important roles, not one role. It has carried some of the most important debates and documents of our party and the movement, by the way, not just the SACP, but the movement as a whole. I was going through the editions in 1962. None of course, the program was long. It wasn't carried in the AC, but the AC did speak about how to read the 1962 program, the South African Road to Freedom. I'm saying that, by the way, because the University of Natal has digitized all the 164 issues of the AC between 1959 and 1994. Yes, you can actually go to disa.ukzn.ac.za. You can read every article from there in the African Communist from 1959. There was only one edition in 1959 in October, which was the founding edition, right up until 1994. We have committed ourselves, at least at head office, to continue actually to also, more than just digitize, because today we've still got lots of, now the AC that is in electronic version, that we need to find a way of archiving it properly. And it's also not by mistake that we are meeting here, by the way, because also Lily's Leaf Farm now, and thanks to Nick and his team here, is now officially hosting the party archives. We really appreciate that. Apart from the debates, of course, the president of the ANC also spoke about some of the debates that were carried in the AC, including the debates, many debates, by the way, post-1973 workers' strikes, post-1976 student uprisings. Not always getting things right, by the way. I remember the big debate, Comrade Eunice and Comrade Jenny, I'm sure you'll remember this. I think Jeremy was still in jail on the registration, on the trade union registration after the Vihan Commission recommendations, whether that was a trap or a real thing. There were big debates about that. And of course, those comrades who ultimately formed for SACP, in their wisdom, decided to negotiate. Many comrades in SACP, in exile, were not very excited about that. The registration was the correct route to go. But for SACP was indeed formed after some of the greatest struggles for recognition waged by the trade union movement, including the matter that the president was talking about, the debate about negotiations. The AC, of course, plays a very important role as an educator, not just of party cadres, but beyond party membership. Also, it has acted as a recruiter, in the sense that many comrades, even who were not in the party, who managed to read African Communists, participate in debates, ended up being recruited into the Communist Party because of the education that they had acquired through the AC. The AC also promoted internationalism. Some of the comrades will remember the famous Africa Notes and the international section. ISOP was very much central in that. Mzala played a role at some stage in the late 80s in compiling those Mzala Nxumalo, the Africa Notes. The role of the AC in internationalist struggle, very much contributing to cadres and those who were reading into understanding what was happening in South Africa, in the region, in the continent, and of course in the world as a whole. Indeed, we do have challenges, comrades, of soliciting more, further soliciting more types of articles and emphasis in order to take the AC forward. The party has come up with a very important concept of late, which we would like to invite more people to write on, reflecting on the crisis, what we refer to as the crisis of social reproduction, not only in South Africa but in the region as a whole, which in fact is a very important Marxist analysis, even better understanding what we refer to as xenophobia, as not a correct analysis, that we have to understand this as one particular manifestation of the crisis of social reproduction in the region. even the migration patterns are largely also reflecting economic inequalities in the region, but also the extent of this crisis. We need to write even more about gender struggles, the analysis of gender, the analysis of gender-based violence in the African communist, issues relating to the environment. I'm trying to read a book at the moment. I don't think I'll succeed, but Comrade Jeremy said, don't feel guilty. If you have browsed it and you think you understand what the essence is, that's fine, you know. Increasingly, I find myself I buy a lot of books, which I can't read, you know, many of them. It's called Fossil Capitalism. It's a fairly recent book, you know, published over the last 3 to 4 years by a Swedish Marxist, you know, on the environment. It's a very interesting argument. It tries to posit there that it's not fossil fuel that has caused, the use of fossil fuel that has caused global change, climate warming. It's the capitalist uses of fossil fuel that have actually led to global warming. Very interesting argument. It's going to be important also that we strengthen the AC by also soliciting and encouraging more empirically based articles, research-based. It's very important that we do that. And also to use technology to significantly expand the reach of the African communists today and the need to recruit new readership and better interface with progressive academia. One thing that the AC illustrates best maybe more than anything else, is on the vanguard role of the party. The President was saying this, that to play a vanguard role, you don't always have to be in the forefront physically by leading organizations or struggles. You can lead through ideas, even if others may be leading, even when the ANC is leading the National Democratic Revolution, but through ideas you can be able to play a vanguard role. And that's the role that the AC has actually played. And I think this has got lessons for us today, as the party today is talking about building fronts, that we don't always to be at the head of leading those fronts, but we can be able to play our vanguard role through ideological work and through selfless sacrifices and dedication and being exemplary in our work. But most importantly, both the President and Comrade Bheki, the GS of COSATU, have raised this matter. We really sorely need to take forward the debate on the economy in the current period. I was lucky to address the PC of KZN yesterday. I was saying to the comrades, if there is one thing that our Special National Congress really needs to focus on, is economic transformation, the challenges now. And that, amongst other things, we need to go back to our document, going to the root. But we need the AC as a platform to reflect the debates. Maybe before I end, I've been asked also to say, which is, by the way, one thing that can be done. What was my personal encounter with the African communists, myself, as Blade? And I think that Alex was trying to get everybody who will speak here to reflect on that a little bit, because he was having in his mind, we could have, Comrade Editor, you know, some notes that we bring together, publication on different comrades' experiences. That would be very interesting. Just at a personal level, each one of us, what's our history with the AC? I must admit that the first time I managed to read the AC and begin to understand what it was on my first trip overseas in 1982 as an intern at Tonga Tulet. And I even remember where I got it. I bought it somewhere in those left-wing bookshops in New York, in Greenwich Village, together, of course, with the Monthly Review, the New Left Review, Pluto Press, I wasn't that clear at that time how ultra-left Pluto Press was, but anyway, coming out of South Africa, you know, seeing left-wing material, having embraced Marxism in 1980 as an honors student, that was my first real engagement with the AC. Reading it, I was just trying to go through those ACs of 1982, just to remind myself. Now, the next part is very interesting, because Aesop also has something to say about it. Because I joined the board of the South African Labour Bulletin in 1984. And I started getting odd copies of the AC delivered from 85, sometimes under my door in my office at Umlazi campus of the University of Zululand. I remember later some of those, if I remember well, they were covered as magazines on wildlife with a buffalo or a zebra outside, thinking that it's a magazine for, when in fact it was actually a way. And I think that had to do in the late 80s with the resurgence of the mass struggles and the party trying to make its presence, its ideological presence in particular, being felt even more. Now, I'm saying Aesop knows about this because he says, together with other comrades, they wanted to recruit me at the time into the underground of the party in the mid-80s, but they thought I was a workerist because I was in the board of the Labour Bulletin. Actually, we shouldn't blame you for that, because the only two people who were ANC in sympathies at the time and UDF in the Labour Bulletin was myself and Carl von Hoop in that board of the Labour Bulletin that I was in, trying to fight very hard against some of our workers' comrades, some who were not just in the board of the Labour Bulletin, some of which today, by the way, have become very big capitalists, you know, who hated the ANC like nobody's business. I won't mention names, you know, but some of you know, they didn't want the ANC at all, dismissed it as a bourgeois, African bourgeois organization and so on. Today, they are the biggest, some of the biggest capitalists, even working with companies, Comrade Beg, that are exploiting workers like nobody's business. Then I became a regular visitor from 1986, when I was invited by Ibo Mandaza to annual SAPS conferences in Zimbabwe. And I used to go to Grassroots Bookshop in Harare and would read the AC and Sichaba like nobody's business, even carry copies onto the Air Zimbabwe airline back to Johannesburg and leave them in the aeroplane, the copies, because you couldn't bring them in here. I must say though, like some of us, you know, one gained a lot out of this, but also sometimes felt that some of the articles were a little bit too rigid. You know, you like your typical classical Soviet Marxism, in some instances very dry, you know, but very important, you know, publication that played a very important role. I think maybe as I move to ending, I just need to say that one of my exciting moments, just as the last point, was in the early 90s when I first saw my name and my article in the African Communist. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Comrade Jeremy, it was a debate on civil society with Bumes Kosana. To me personally, I must admit, it was a wonderful moment. Historic, because, you know, one had always been wanting to write in the AC. And later, of course, our debates on negotiations. After Comrade Slovo's publication. By the way, Comrade JS himself would admit that the idea of sunset clauses was not his, but it was proposed by Comrade Thabo Mbeki, the NEC of the ANC. But Slovo was bold to actually put it down. some of us felt that this was very provocative, just like the suspension of the armed struggle being announced in KwaZulu-Natal. But those were the roles that the AC played. Let me end, comrades, by really thanking the comrades who have actually carried the AC, especially after '94. It's been very difficult. It's not been easy with the party that is not having enough money and the amount of work that actually goes into the production of the AC. It's amazing. I know Comrade Jeremy carried it a lot, especially just since after 1990, despite the fact that we had a big fight with Slovo over one edition, the first edition of the AC after the elections, with the title Outside Aluta Continua. And Comrade Slovo was saying, what is this struggle you say must actually be pursued now when conditions have changed? He was very irritated, Comrade JS, with Jeremy in particular. And it was interesting to watch them fighting in the Politburo and in the Central Committee. You know, what do you mean now? You know, is it just things going to be the same like before, as if we haven't had? And part of that actually led to the characterization of the democratic breakthrough, the nuancing, that it's not the end of the struggle, yet we've made important advances. Comrade Isop will also remember that. Thank you very much to all of you comrades who have played a role. Comrade Eunice now has been carrying the load, together with Comrade Alex, have joined now by Comrade Booty, Comrade Jenny Schreiner, and also to thank Comrade David. I don't know whether he's here, David Nidri. You know, he's not here. For wonderful design. Not only does he design, he also looks for photographs, you know, on the AC. It's one of the best laid out publications, not just of the left, generally, today. I'm sorry if I've taken a little bit of a long time, comrades. Thank you once more for being here to celebrate this important day. Siyabonga.
Thank you very much, Comrade GS. Siyabonga kakhulu. That was a mouthful. And thanks that you have arrived. You can take your seat here. Comrades, before I hand over to Comrade Tulas, who will be sharing this next session, I'm actually saying he can sit here because he's next to the podium. So he will be able to come here with ease with the next session. I just need to emphasize one issue that Comrade Blade has also talked about, that there is a display outside of all the archives of the AC, which the comrades can have time to look at before they leave. So they have done quite good, extensive work that we shouldn't miss. And then before Comrade Tulas come in front, can I request the following comrades to come down?